agree, and I've gone a step further. In previous legislative sessions, I've done what I could to rein in game fishing parks, even to the point of removing the other fund authority the game fishing parks has and putting it under the South Dakota legislature where I think it belongs. It doesn't make any sense to me that unelected members of a board or commission basically have the power to appropriate millions and millions of dollars. I see Betty in the crowd here. She and I have that in common. We both fought hard to try to rein in game fishing parks and make sure that the property owner's rights are paramount. I want to go back to the grasslands issue in the previous answer because the Lieutenant Governor pointed out how I voted on a resolution. You know, in my conversations with Senator Johnson, I believe he has the same interests that you have. You may disagree about that piece of legislation, but when I've talked to him, his interests are making certain that grazing leases are maintained, that flexibility is maintained with the property owner, that the ability to deal with prairie dogs is strengthened, and I really think that's the intention. I believe him when he tells me that that was his intention, and maybe we just need to work out the details of that legislation.
We'll take the next question.
If you're against the taking of more federal land in South Dakota, how do you feel about game fishing parks buying up land in South Dakota?
I guess I go first. I feel the same way. I don't think it makes any difference what level of government it is that's taking it off of the tax rolls. The danger for...
They would pay taxes. Game fishing parks would pay taxes.
Well, that makes it a little different, I think. I think it depends on the nature of the transaction that they're done. But, you know, the tax base to me is a critical feature, and then the second would be the right of property owners to control their own property that is extremely important.
I think game fishing parks can achieve most of the ends that they are attempting to achieve through lease arrangements or other things less than full purchase. And that gives the property owners the ability to get revenue if they want, but still maintain the ownership of their property in private hands.
We'll take another question. Hello, my name is Craig Shaver. I chair the Property Rights Committee for the South Dakota Stockgrowers, and I'm proud to do so. This morning, our committee addressed the Powder River training expansion. And issues coming out of that expansion involve some pretty big changes in the way training is done. For example, supersonic flight will be allowed under the new change, which means sonic booms. The dropping of flares, which are heat-seeking missile apparatus to protect aircraft. The dropping of aluminum shaft, which is a countermeasure against enemy radar. These issues are going to have quite an effect on landowners in western South Dakota. And we're not interested in making an argument about whether or not we're patriotic. What we want to make an argument about is if we're going to have a burden placed on people because we have defense needs, we'd like to see that burden shared evenly. The Rapid City Chamber of Commerce comes and wants to give the Air Base everything that they want. We understand that. It brings a lot of money into western South Dakota. But we don't think that it is fair for the owners of land under this training to bear the burden of expenses. I was in a meeting at Miles City a couple of years ago where a lot of ranchers in Montana and Wyoming talked about damages that they incurred from the training processes. One of the ideas that we came forward with was having local assessment of fault and damages from training operations. In other words, we have sheriffs and we have state's attorneys, and why can't we have local government assess fault and damages? Because one of the complaints that we heard up there was that you could contact the Air Force and you never got anywhere. People wouldn't get back to you, and if they did, damages would be denied or claims not paid. And would you, either one of you, support the idea of local assessment of fault and damages revolving around training processes?
Well, I'm going to confess this is the first I've heard of that approach. I have had some conversations, in fact, with some of the stock grower members last winter, no, the winter before, about the Powder River Moa and sonic booms and that sort of thing. So I'm a little bit familiar with that, but this is the first I've heard of the notion of local assessment of damages, and I'd be wide open to working with you on that. If that's something that would help reimburse landowners, compensate them for damages they've suffered, you bet. You bet.
This is an area where I have spent quite a little of my professional life representing landowners who have had their rights either reduced or their property taken, mostly in the context of condemnation of ag land. This is a little different, and when the defendant is the Department of Defense, I don't blame anyone for feeling like they're outnumbered when it comes to being treated fairly for compensation. So the only way to do it, it seems to me, would be some method of local control. I don't know whether it is through the governmental officers that you've suggested, the state's attorney, or whether it would be through the court system, which is the way condemnation cases are currently handled. But from what I understand, and I just was learning an awful lot in the hallway today about this problem, it's a serious problem, whether it's inhibiting a farmer's ability to spray, or whether it's a wind tower's inability to function, given the ceiling, the low ceiling. This is a serious problem. And really, I mean, the property owner's interests are extremely important. We have to balance that with whatever national defense concerns, I guess, are involved. And I guess I haven't been persuaded yet that that's even the case. But the property owner's interests, I think, are really important.